Dewgong and Cloyster. Which one is better in Pokemon Yellow? To find out, I've completed over 10 solo playthroughs of the game. I've collected the data, run the numbers, and by the end, you will understand exactly how these two stack up against each other. Plus, we'll get to see how 2-stage ice types rank against all of the other species that I've completed. The playthrough rules are only my starter in battle, no items in battle with 2 exceptions, no overworld glitches, exploits, or RNG manipulation. I want to avoid sequence breaking with 1 exception, and then no evasion boosting moves until level 100 because they're pretty boring. Let's start this journey by getting to know each Pokemon in my first blind playthrough. I don't do any prep going into these other than quickly reviewing their base stats and move pool. This is a good test to see how intuitive each Pokemon is to play. For base stats, Dewgong has 90 HP, 70 attack, 80 defense, 70 speed, giving it a 13.67 chance to crit in Generation 1, and 95 special, which is perfect because both the water and ice type deal special damage in Generation 1. It has a medium fast growth rate, which isn't great in the early game, but overall, this is workable. It's the most common growth rate in Generation 1. In terms of move pool, it actually has a really good start. Headbutt, Growl, and Aurora Beam. Then through level up, at level 44 it gets Rest, one of my favorite moves, and all the way at level 56 it gets Ice Beam. But I'll be teaching this with the TM far before I ever get to that level. And speaking of TMs and HMs, we get access to the 3 water type moves, Bubble Beam, Water Gun, and Surf, the 2 ice type moves, Ice Beam and Blizzard, and then a bunch of normal stuff. And I mean literally normal type moves. Among them though is one special exception, and that's Horn Drill. However, without being able to use items in battle, I can't spam X accuracies, bypass accuracy checks, and then use the typical speedrunning strategy. That won't be viable today. The Rivals team is going to be dependent on how the first 2 battles in the game go. If you lose in the lab, then he picks Vaporeon, which gets a complement of Magneton and Ninetales. If you beat him on the lab and skip the Route 22 battle, then he's going to be picking Flareon, which has Magneton and Cloyster alongside it. But if you beat him in both locations, then he'll choose Jolteon, having Cloyster and Ninetales. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but I find in these solo runs that typically water types do better against the Jolteon team than they do against the Flareon team. And that's just because Magneton is such a nuisance for water types to go up against. I'm going to talk about it at length later into this video. For now, I'm not going to be fighting the rival on Route 22, so we are going to go up against the Flareon team. This is the most efficient play to do in the early game, saving as much time as is possible. My primary metric for evaluating all Pokemon's performances is the real time they take to complete the game, so going fast is the name of the game. Because Dewgong has access to Aurora Beam, I don't think I need to fight any optional trainers in the forest. I only take time to catch myself a Pidgey so that I can use Fly later on. After that I get a little bit lucky because I run into a Pidgeotto, which is a rare encounter in Pokemon Yellow exclusively. It gives really good experience, so I use Aurora Beam on it, knocking it out for a little bit of a boost in the early game. Then I quickly defeat the bug catcher at the end of the forest and head into Pewter City. I know that Dewgong can definitely fight Brock on minimum battles, but I don't think that's the best early game play. Leveling up a little bit more with quick experience from the junior trainer tends to be a little bit better in the early game because it gives you better damage ranges throughout all of Route 3, which features quite a few mandatory trainers, a total of 4, and they have a lot of Pokemon. With the junior trainer defeated, Dewgong is level 9, now I'm ready to face Brock. He leads with Geodude. I am obviously faster than the slow rock type. Aurora Beam does massive damage and one-shots. This is the perfect start. Next, Onix comes in. It is faster than Dewgong, using Bide first. However, I don't think it's ever going to pay back damage since Aurora Beam should two-shot in the worst case scenario. However, it's the best case scenario here. Aurora Beam is able to one-shot his ace. So for Dewgong, the first gym leader is a clean sweep, as you probably expected. But what about Cloyster? I often say that it has low special, but that isn't really true. It has low special when considered in the context of its defense. Whenever you're attacking Cloyster, it feels like it has low special. But if you actually look at its base stats, its special is respectable. It has 50 HP, 95 attack, 180 defense, which is the highest defense stat in the entire game, 70 speed, giving it a 13.67 chance to crit, and 85 special, which is only 10 points lower than Dewgong's. Just for some Generation 1 context, here are all of the Pokemon ranked by their base special. If we go all the way down the list to 80 85 special, then we find Pokemon like Charizard and Blastoise. So yeah, Cloyster's base special is not as low as I've made it out to be. However, that's because I'm always thinking about the Pokemon in a defensive context. Now I'm being offensive, and utilizing its base special is actually going to be quite good because its attack is only 10 points higher, and while in the early game it would be nice to use my attack stat, I'm not going to get the chance. Cloyster's starting move pool is Withdraw, Supersonic, Clamp, and Aurora Beam, and through level up it only learns one new move. This is likely because it's a stone evolution. It gets Spike Cannon at level 50, which is absolutely useless. Through TM and HM, it gets access to pretty much all the same stuff that Dewgong has, with some notable exceptions. It doesn't get access to Horn Drill or Body Slam, but it does get access to Teleport and Reflect. You might think that Teleport would be useful in traversing the map more quickly, saving a little bit of time here and there, but it's really not going to be useful. Cloyster is going to be dealing with a decent amount of moveset constraints throughout this run, and we're going to talk about that as this video progresses. For now, just like with Dewgong, I'm not going to fight the rival on Route 22. Instead, I'm heading straight through the forest towards Brock. With Cloyster, I don't get lucky running into a Pidgeotto, so I'm just going to defeat the one mandatory trainer and then the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym for more experience. While I do that, I want to mention the one major difference between these two ice types, and that's the fact that Cloyster has a slow growth rate. So, advantage Dewgong there. The slow growth rate, if you didn't already know, is the kiss of death in these solo challenges. So right out of the gate, I was pretty worried for Cloyster. However, it has one major advantage, and that's the move Clamp. Against Brock, Clamp is an obvious advantage. It does 4 times damage against both of his Pokemon. However, I don't even need it. I'm sure I can just beat him with Aurora Beam. I didn't even heal going into this fight because of Cloyster's outrageous defense. Aurora Beam one-shots the Geodude, but I did choose to use Clamp against Onix. But it doesn't give me a chance to show you how the move functions, because with only a single hit, I knock out his ace. These first two splits are very close to each other. Cloyster's time is 3 minutes and 8 seconds, whereas Dewgong's is 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Cloyster right now is in the lead by 9 seconds. Right now, we have a close match on our hands. I want to take a brief breather from the intensity and quickly talk about Cloyster's back sprite. This one is actually kind of good if you zoom out. It does look like Cloyster. My one criticism for this back sprite is that it looks a little bit horizontally compressed, much like Seeking's back sprite. Either way, it's a massive improvement for this evolutionary line because Shelder's back sprite looks like Oddish. Route 3 is very simple for Cloyster because Aurora Beam and Clamp are fantastic in this portion of the game. Upon arriving in Mount Moon, I have a choice. I can pick up the Water Gun TM if I want a more reliable water type move, but let's remember, Clamp has base 35 power, and after the same type attack bonus, that's an effective power of 52. So Water Gun just gives a little bit more effective power and more accuracy. I decided not to teach it because I'm going to teach Bide in the place of Supersonic, and I want to keep Withdraw for the late game. I fight only one optional trainer in the cave, this Hiker for really fast experience yields, and then I proceed to Jesse and James at the end of the cave, who are both really easy for Cloyster to defeat. Now, heading into Cerulean City, I'm going to have to make a choice with both of the Pokemon. Do I fight the rival first, or do I fight Misty first? With most water types, Misty makes the most sense, because you get access to the Bubble Beam TM after defeating her, which greatly improves your rate of progress over Route 24 and 25. With Cloyster and Dewgong, things are a little bit more complicated, because we already have Aurora Beam and Clamp in this case, so Bubble Beam isn't the major upgrade that it is with some other water types. Also, I've said before that water types struggle in the early game, usually because they don't have answers to grass types, and that's where the water-ice combination is so fantastic. These two typings really cover the weaknesses well that the other typing has. For example, water type is weak to the grass type, but ice is super effective against grass type Pokemon. The ice type is weak to fire type and rock type Pokemon, but water type moves destroy both of those typings. The water-ice pairing doesn't have super effective damage against the electric type, but remember that Surge is completely incompetent in Kanto. So beyond that, the only typing that has super effective damage is the fighting type. But the fighting type in Generation 1 is, well, not very good. Also, I should say that most fighting types in these games have terrible special stats, really except Machamp. So they're basically taking 2 times damage from any special move, and both the water and ice type deal special damage. Editor Scott here, I forgot Poliwrath. It has base 70 special, which is 5 more than Machamp, so it is the fighting type with the highest special in Generation 1. What I'm trying to say here is that water and ice go really well together, unlike water and socks. Luckily, to keep your socks dry, we've got Vessi, the sponsor of this video. I've always disliked getting new shoes because the first week is so uncomfortable while you break them in and get used to the new fit. I recently got a new pair of Vessis, the Weekend Chelsea, or or is it the weekend Chelseas? I'm not sure. I'm really bad at this kind of thing. It's probably plural. Anyway, like my other two pair of Vessies, they are so comfortable right out of the box. It's probably because Vessi are made out of Dymatex, a flexible material that has 4-way stretch. They're waterproof, which is essential for me in Canada where ice and snow are always turning water into mud. The weekend Chelsea has a high top, so my ankle is now safe from water. Plus, this feature lets me replace my old winter boots, which were awful, stiff, and uncomfortable. Plus, they had a zipper on the side, which was just so frustrating and time-consuming. Yes, I'm complaining about a zipper being time-consuming. My Vessies, on the other hand, all 3 of my pairs are easy to slip on. I genuinely love this company, and I love the shoes they make. They are so great, and I would urge you to check them out because they're fantastic. Also, they're super durable. This is my pair that's at least 2 years old now, and I've never seen a pair of shoes hold up this well. So go to vessi.com/scotsthoughts to embrace every single rainy day and enjoy an instant 15% off your first purchase at checkout. Thanks to Vessi for sponsoring this video and keeping me dry, which is going to be very important against the next trainer, Misty. Staryu's up first. In this case, I'm going to use Clamp to knock it out. This is slow going, but I don't really have a better option. I guess I could go for Aurora Beam here too and potentially lower the Staryu's attack, meaning it would do less damage with Tackle. In this case, she is never going to be choosing her water type moves, which is actually a boon for Cloyster. Because of its lower special in comparison with its nice defense stat, I would actually take more damage from Starmie attacking me with a move like Bubble Beam. But in this case, it's only going to be using Tackle. Now, I could have set up my defense with Withdraw, but I didn't want to do this because I wanted Tackle to do as much damage as possible so that I can use Bide to deal massive damage to the Starmie. Sometimes this doesn't go well if the Starmie's always outspeeding you and it's constantly choosing Tackle the turn you go for Bide, and then when you're accumulating energy it just sets up with Harden over and over again. Luckily for me, once I unleash energy just once, I figured that Clamp would be enough to chip away at the Starmie, and it is. So I take an easy win over the second gym leader and earn myself the Bubble Beam TM, which I teach right away in the place of Bide. Time for Rival 2. This one's going to be pretty easy. I'm outspeeding his fastest Pokemon, Spearow, and Aurora Beam's able to one-shot with super effective damage. The Sandshrew is simple, using Bubble Beam. Rattata is also a one-hit, so this is basically a clean sweep. The Eevee does take 2 hits, but it's incompetent against me, unless it's set up Sand Attack. I think that's the only way I could see this rival slowing Cloyster down. And just because of my defense stat, I don't even think he could beat me unless it got profoundly unlucky, missing over and over again. Okay, Route 24 and 25 is the section of the game where I really like to focus on my PP. With Aurora Beam and Bubble Beam, Cloyster essentially has an unlimited reserve. There's no way it's ever going to have to go back to the Pokemon Center in order to heal. Just for a little bit more experience, I fight this hiker. I call him the Seismic Hiker now. I can knock out his Geodudes very quickly. This battle gives me 4 Pokemon of experience, whereas the other battle against the Junior Trainer, one of them is mandatory. He would only give me 2 Pokemon worth of experience. And I figured since I'm one-hitting all these Pokemon, I might as well just fight the hiker. Like I mentioned before, Ice is great coverage against grass types, so the Oddish Lass at the end of the route has no chance against Cloyster. To skip a heal in the Cerulean City Pokemon Center, which would cost roughly 10 seconds, I'm going to use the Elixir that I picked up on Route 25. Fighting the Bystander Rocket, I want to draw your attention to one major advantage that Cloyster has in this run. The fact that it has Clamp means that it can trap any enemies that are slower than it infinitely, provided it's not missing. This is going to allow me to knock out Pokemon like this Drowsy without exposing myself to Hypnosis. This tactic isn't really that important in this specific battle, but as the playthrough continues, it's going to become increasingly useful. Okay, time for the SSN. I'm going to play safe here and pick up Rest, although I don't think Cloyster is going to need it. Unfortunately, no Body Slam. I grab the rare candy, and then I fight the rival. This fight is just as trivial as the previous one was. So with him out of the way, now we're going to go up against Lieutenant Surge. Going up against Raichu, Cloyster is level 24. Of course it's slower, but I can use Bubble Beam to drop its speed and then potentially trap it infinitely in Clamp. I do get the speed drop on turn 1, which is perfect. Then I go for Clamp, it misses, Surge uses an X speed so that now Raichu is faster than Cloyster again. It uses Mega Kick next turn, Clamp misses for a second time, and then Surge chooses Thunderbolt, which knocks out Cloyster. Alright, so I got unlucky. It's frustrating when Surge wins, but these resets don't cost a lot of time. roughly 15 to 20 seconds per reset since Surge only has one Pokemon. The resets that I'm really worried about in these solo challenges are the ones where I'm resetting on the final Pokemon of a battle consisting of 5 enemies or 6 enemies. Those cost a lot of time. I can just retry Surge until I get lucky. In this case, I don't drop speed with Bubble Beam, but since it's more consistent than Clamp, it just hits over and over again, and the Raichu has no idea what it's doing. If it's not choosing Thunderbolt, Cloyster isn't going to lose. So that's it for Surge. With him defeated, Cloyster gets a 12.5% boost to its defense stat, so it's going to take almost no physical damage now. I think it's time to switch back to Dewgong and see how it does over this section of the game. Inside of Mount Moon, I do pick up the Water Gun TM and teach this right away in the empty slot. Just like with Cloyster, I fight the Hiker for some boosts of experience, and then I finish off the cave and head into Cerulean City, targeting Misty first. Since Dewgong is a Pokemon that has lower defense and higher HP, I think that running Bide against Misty is actually going to be far superior to using it with Cloyster. So I teach this move in the place of Growl, and then I go up against the second gym leader. I can use Headbutt to knock out the Staryu. It takes 3 turns because she uses her X-Defend. Then it gets Starmie. After it gets set up with Harden or X-Defend, I'm just going to use Bide so that I can bypass all of the defensive boosts. Eventually, Starmie attacks with Tackle, Bide unleashes massive damage, and I finish off the Starfish using Headbutt. So now that I think about it, Water Gun wasn't really useful with Dewgong either. It just wasted time because I have Bubble Beam now. I'm going to teach it in the place of Bide just so I have 2 attacking water type moves. Maybe it will be helpful for PP, but just like Cloyster, PP is not going to be the thing holding Dewgong back along Route 24 and 25. The rival's trivial, just like he was with Cloyster. Now I want to talk about Headbutt as a coverage move. For a lot of water types, having access to a normal move is really helpful against grass types. For example, the Horsey line is terrible against all the grass types because they only have access to water type moves up until this point in the game. Also, Almanite is another Pokemon that really suffers against this lass, and that playthrough is the reason that I got trainer art for her. However, with both Cloyster and Dewgong, they have Aurora Beam for coverage against these Pokemon, and then even against this Rocket and his Drowsy, you would think that Headbutt would be better against the Psychic type, but no, it has the same number of turns to KO as both Aurora Beam and Bubble Beam. If I have to move my cursor 2 times to get down to Headbutt to choose it and use it, it's not really a better choice. It's going to be more time efficient and frame efficient to use Aurora Beam just to knock the Drowsy out in 2 turns. The one upside to using Headbutt here, and the reason I finally did choose to go for it, is that you can flinch the Drowsy, which would prevent it from using Hypnosis, and if you get put to sleep, it wastes so much time. So I wanted to play around that and have a little bit more upside. The only other way that Headbutt is useful is on the SSN, when I'm picking up Rest and I have to fight 2 water types. Here, both Aurora Beam and Bubble Beam will do less damage. Now, I could have picked up Body Slam first and taught it for this battle, however, I don't do that because then I usually forget to come back and pick up Rest because my muscle memory has me always going over to pick up Rest first. I don't like to play against that kind of thing, so I learned Body Slam after in the place of Water Gun. I'm going to keep Headbutt for now, but really it doesn't have a use. I stomp the rival, he is incredibly easy, and then Dewgong goes up against Surge. For this battle, it's 2 levels higher than Cloyster was, plus I have a better special stat which will help me tank damage from Thunderbolt. First turn, Raichu goes for Growl, which lowers the damage on Body Slam, but I do get Paralysis after the first turn. Then I can just use Bubble Beam, it's doing decent damage. Looks like Raichu is going to be a 3-hit. It goes for Thunderbolt, Dewgong survives on 25 HP, and I get a chance to use Bubble Beam again. But Raichu survives on red health. Okay, so that's not ideal, but then Paralysis activates, Raichu can't move, and because of that I knock it out, taking a win first attempt over Surge. The splits up until now are very close. Dewgong has pulled into the lead, but only slightly so by 16 seconds. Also, the Misty split is only 1 second apart between these 2 Pokemon. The fact that Dewgong has taken a 16-second lead over Cloyster in the Lieutenant Surge split is entirely because Cloyster got a single reset. Resetting to Surge costs about 15 seconds if you didn't know. With Surge defeated, I now have to go through the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet. The Wrapping Lass is easy because Aurora Beam one-shots all of her Pokemon. Slowbone is kind of problematic because he confuses Dewgong, which ends up being really annoying, but Body Slam is the solution here. The Status Condition Junior Trainer is solved with Aurora Beam, one-shotting both of her grass types, and of course, the self-destructing Hiker is not going to stand a chance against either of these water types. So, Celadon City, does it make sense to go to the hideout or not? I think since this is a first playthrough, I'm going to play safe, going to the hideout to collect 1 extra rare candy. Inside the department store, I buy myself 1 extra TM. We will talk about this one later. On the top floor, I exchanged the freshwater for the ice beam TM, and of course I'm going to teach this to Dewgong right away in the place of Aurora Beam. I could have gotten rid of Headbutt, but I didn't want to place Ice Beam in Headbutt's slot, forcing me to rearrange my moves. If I just teach Ice Beam in slot 1, then it's ready for spamming A. And this has great effect against the rival in Pokemon Tower. I one-shot all of his Pokemon with Ice Beam, even the Shelder. The only small bump in this fight is when I get a Gen 1 miss against the Sandshrew. This exposes me to Sand Attack, but luckily the Sandshrew just goes for Scratch. After that, Eevee's last, and Ice Beam one-shots, despite the fact that it has pretty good special and it rarely goes down to one hit. I took this as an encouraging signal. Maybe Dewgong can one-shot Agatha Jr.'s 2 Ghastly, and the answer is yes it can, so there's no risk here. Dewgong is doing really well at this point in the game. Defeating Jesse and James, I was getting very confident. So on Cycling Road, I skip most of the optional training fighting only the biker boss, because his experience yields are hard to pass up. Let's talk about the Safari Zone. In my solo challenges, I usually like to do this before Erica, but that means that my Pokemon is at a lower level. 33 right now for Dewgong, and Cloyster will be even lower if I take the same route because it's a slow growth rate. One player that I've been really aspiring to be more like this year is ZealousPawn. He's been getting fantastic results in Pokemon Yellow, and he has also started his own solo challenge channel, so if you want to see some truly high level plays in Yellow version, go and check him out. I've left a link in the description. One of the things that I notice he always does is optimize his level and his routing around being at least 37 for the Safari Zone, and hopefully above 43 and more ideally above 46 for Pokemon Mansion. This is so that repels are always effective and you don't run into any wild Pokemon. By the way, on stream recently in my Red series, we realized that the level thresholds in both the Safari Zone and in Pokemon Mansion is lower in the original games, but higher here in Yellow, because the wild Pokemon are at lower levels. So this is another nuanced way in which Yellow version is more difficult than the original 2 games. This time though, I get lucky in the Safari Zone not running into any wild Pokemon. With this area complete, I use Dig, head back to Celadon City, and now I'm gonna face Erica. Dewgong, more like Erica Gone, because Dewgong absolutely destroys her team. Ice Beam 1 hits everything, that's that. Next, I'm headed to Koga's gym. This area can be annoying for some special attackers because the Juggler's Pokemon are quite beefy, like these Drowsy specifically. Even Dewgong with Body Slam is not able to one-shot them, but this doesn't really matter, it's just a slower fight. For experience inside of the gym, I fight the Tamers, and by the time I made it to the final mandatory Juggler, my Ice Beam PP was depleted. Now, I wanted to go back to the Pokemon Center to heal this, but in the process of leaving the gym, I decided not to fight Koga after all. Instead, I'm gonna go to Silph and do extra training. I was getting worried about his Venonats and potentially not one-shotting all of them. If that's the case, then 2 of them have Sleep Powder, and that might cause Dewgong to get a reset. Plus, in Silph, there's a bunch of trainers that have really good experience yields. This scientist with 5 Pokemon, this scientist with 4 Pokemon, and this scientist who I call the Triantist who has 3 Pokemon. Also, if we want to keep counting down in terms of scientists and their team counts, we can fight this guy who has 2 Pokemon. Doing that levels Dewgong up to level 40, and this is typically the level that I like to fight Rival 5 at. Bubble Beam's able to one-shot his Sandslash. Next is Cloyster, and I don't really have a good move against it. While Body Slam is neutral, it's also physical, and Bubble Beam, while not very effective, is special, so it ends up being the better choice against Cloyster. I was worried though, because the Cloyster just spams Supersonic over and over. This is because the rival has good AI, and Cloyster's moveset is Withdraw, Supersonic, Clamp, and Aurora Beam. 3 of those moves are not very effective, and 1 of them is neutral, so that's why Cloyster is only spamming the confusion-inducing move. Because of this, Dewgong hits itself a lot, and by the time I make it to the Magneton, I don't have good health. However, Ice Beam just gets a freeze, and I knock the electric type out with 2 hits. Now, right before the Magneton faints, I want you to glance over at my speed stat. It's 83. Kadabra's is 84. Here's the thing. Magneton goes down, gives me experience, Dewgong levels up to 41, giving Dewgong exactly 85 speed, so it moves first against the Kadabra and one-shots. By the way, in the department store, I bought Calcium, I did not buy Carbos. If I simply bought 1 Carbos, I would have been faster than the Kadabra at the lower level, and I wouldn't have required the level up after the Magneton. But I can't complain with how things are lining up in this battle. Flareon, on the other hand, does not go down to a single Bubble Beam. It attacks with Fire Spin, which does do some damage, bringing Dewgong down to red health, but I'm still able to get in another Bubble Beam. At this point, you might be wondering, why are you not using Silph? Because it definitely would have been a better choice against Flareon. And yes, that is true. However, Silph and Ice Beam both have the same base power. Ice Beam, on the other hand, has the upside for a freeze. Now, Headbutt is basically dead weight on my set right now. I could just delete it and have Silph. I could keep Bubble Beam if you're thinking the speed drop is something that I want to have access to. It really isn't. The reason I'm not teaching Silph is because in Generation 1, there is no move deleter. Once I teach the move, I can't get rid of it. And that will mess up all of my plans for the late game. So for now, I'm going to have to continue relying on Ice Beam. But that's totally fine because Giovanni, as you would expect, is incompetent. With Silph finished, I head back to the Fuchsia City gym to face Koga. At level 43, Dewgong is able to one-shot the first Venonat, the second Venonat, but not the third. That means it has a chance to use Sleep Powder. Luckily for Dewgong, Venonat misses. I finish it off, move on to the Venomoth. Here, it's using Leech Life, which is not very good. Dewgong gets a critical hit with Ice Beam, inflicting massive damage. Venomoth starts to set up with Double Team, which can be a problem. There are ways for Cloyster to work around this, but not for Dewgong. It's just going to need to get lucky. Venomoth starts using Psychic. Luckily, Ice Beam hits, and Koga's ace goes down. Dewgong gets a 5th split of 30 minutes and 37 seconds. And with the Soul Badge, I now have a speed boost. Cloyster also excels in the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet portion of the game. Because it has the slow growth rate, more than Dewgong, I think it needs to go into the Rocket Hideout to collect one extra rare candy. And unfortunately, unlike Dewgong, I'm not going to be buying an additional TM in the department store. Instead, just getting Ice Beam and teaching this right away in the place of Aurora Beam. The rival in Pokemon Tower is easy, just like with Dewgong, although here I think I'm making a subpar choice, which is choosing Clamp. I should just be spamming Ice Beam, even against Pokemon like the Magnemite or the Shelder. Sometimes in these solo challenges, I'm making split-second decisions. I'm thinking, well, I don't want to get hit by Shelder's Supersonic, so I'm like, well, Clamp will prevent that because I can trap it over and over again, but I'm forgetting that Supersonic isn't really much of a threat. Cloyster is going to do almost no damage to itself in confusion, plus Ice Beam is going to two-shot. What I'm really saying is that all of my mistakes are laid bare for you. Thank you for being kind in the comments section. Okay, it's time to talk about a major difference between these two Pokemon. Dewgong was able to one-shot the Ghastly, and I did not think Cloyster was going to using Ice Beam. It's both a lower level and it has lower special, so instead I go for Clamp, hoping to trap the Ghastly and avoid Confuse Ray or Paralysis from Lick. This doesn't work because Clamp misses. Due to this, I get confused, Cloyster hits itself twice, Ghastly uses Nightshade, eventually it uses Lick, paralyzing Cloyster, and I only have 7 hit points left. Confuse Ray reconfuses, I decide to go for Ice Beam to test its damage range, and yes, as I expected, Cloyster is not able to one-shot the Ghastly, just barely. It hits itself in confusion, and that's its second reset. The piece of learning that all of you should take away from this battle is that Clamp should only be used in the scenarios where it absolutely is required to avoid something that would ruin the rest of the fight. And it's also good to only prioritize it in battles that have multiple Pokemon. 2 Ghastly is not really enough. So coming back to the fight, I'm just going to spam Ice Beam and knock the Ghastly out in 2 hits. And this doesn't work. I get confused, paralyzed, and hit by Nightshade, taking a second reset against Agatha Jr. Luckily, in my 3rd attempt, I'm able to beat her and move on with Cloyster's run. So Cloyster, unlike Dewgong, is not crushing the game at this point. It's starting to run into problems. So on Cycling Road, I'm going to do some additional training, fighting the Grimy Biker, Double Wheezing, and the Biker Boss. With Cloyster, my decision making around Silph is a little bit different. I don't have the same late game plans that I do with Dewgong, so teaching the water type move right now makes sense for me. I put it in the place of Bubble Beam, and then I head back to Celadon City to face Erica. Ice Beam one-shots Tangela, Weepinbell, and Gloom, so even with a lower special stat, Cloyster has no problems here, just like Dewgong. Silph's next. Continuing to mirror Dewgong's approach, I do a bunch of optional training here, but because of the slow growth rate, we are not able to get to level 40. Instead, only getting to level 37 before I deplete all of the trainers with good experience yields here. I don't want to fight a bunch of people that are inefficient, so I'm going to try the rival at this level, although I'm not confident about this battle. Currently, we are slower than the Kadabra, which is not great. Ice Beam can one-shot the Sandslash, and then I can trap the Cloyster or any other Pokemon in Clamp and knock them out. I'm going to do the same thing for the Magneton to hopefully avoid Thunder Shock. However, I misjudged the damage that Silph would do. After bringing the Magneton to half health, I thought I would knock it out, but I don't, so I do tank a Thunder Shock. This leaves Cloyster with about half health for the Kadabra. It goes for Confusion, its weaker move, which is really good. Cloyster survives on 33 hit points, but I have to two-shot because I don't have a physical move, so I tank another hit. Cloyster lives with 4 hit points, and I move on to the Flareon. Now, I could go for Surf, which if it doesn't knock out, the Flareon will get me with either Ember or Fire Spin. Or I could chance things with Clamp if I think Surf isn't going to have enough damage. I decided to play more aggressively, choosing Surf, and it does enough with a critical hit. Okay, one reason Cloyster was a slightly lower level for the rival, despite fighting more trainers in Silph, is because I didn't fight the people inside of Koga's gym and then backtracked to Silph after realizing that I didn't want to take on Koga. So Cloyster is going to be level 41 for the Poison type specialist. Here, since Ice Beam isn't going to be one-shotting the Venonats, I can use Clamp on turn 1 to knock them out. I Surf the second Venonat since it doesn't have Sleep Powder, and that's the only move that I'm really scared of. I Clamp the third one, avoiding Sleep Powder, and move on to the Venomoth. Here, Ice Beam makes more sense. I could freeze, plus it's going to take multiple turns to knock out Koga's ace. What I'm really worried about is getting hit by Psychic and having my special dropped, because then I'm going to do almost no damage. Plus, Venomoth can set up Double Team, which would be problematic. Luckily for Cloyster, it just keeps hitting, and over 4 turns, it knocks out Venomoth. I was almost able to 3-shot. At a slightly higher level, I definitely would have, but with the slow growth rate, I think it would just take too much time to do that training. Luckily, there's a different solution for next time. On my way to Cinnabar Island, I'm going to continue fighting trainers that have good experience yields, in this case, Psych. Then inside of Pokemon Mansion, I want to draw your attention to something. Cloyster is only level 42. There are level 43 and level 46 Raticate here, so even with a Repel, I'm not going to be able to block these Pokemon. That's a downside of having the slow growth rate. In here, I pick up the Blizzard TM, which I think will be useful later on. Remember, in Gen 1, Blizzard has 90% accuracy. Inside Blaine's gym, I fight 2 trainers to get Cloyster over a damage rounding threshold at level 43 before fighting the Fire-type specialist. Now, if you're used to Red and Blue, you're going to expect him to be absolutely awful, but in Yellow version, he is really scary. All 3 of his Pokemon outspeed Cloyster, but there is a solution here. I can use Withdraw to badge boost my speed after getting Koga's badge. This will allow me to outspeed all 3 of his Pokemon, but it takes 2 withdraws to do this. Ninetales chooses Flamethrower before that, and it inflicts more than half damage. This is not ideal. I go for Surf, which does more than half to Ninetales, but it chooses another Flamethrower, and that's that for Cloyster. Here's the thing about Gen 1 though. The enemy is not picking its moves based on damage ranges. Instead, it picks its moves based on type effectiveness if it has good AI. Otherwise, it randomizes its selection, and Blaine does not have good AI, so he's purely randomizing his move choice here. Due to this, I can get lucky, and the Ninetales can just go for things like Quick Attack, and then I knock it out for free. I miss Clamp on the Rapidash. Luckily, it's not doing anything to me, it just misses its attack, and then I knock it out. Arcanine is last. I use Clamp, trapping it, doing decent damage. I have to use one more Clamp, but this one also works, bringing Arcanine down to red health. From there, knocking it out with Surf is the reliable play. So Blaine's defeated, and with him out of the way, I get a 12.5% boost to my special stat. This is usually why I like to fight him before Sabrina, is just because it improves odds against her having the special boost. Also, there's no real advantage to beating Sabrina other than getting her experience, because the Psywave TM is absolutely trash. I have not used it in a single solo challenge. Like, I've used the move, but only when I'm forced to do it at the very beginning of the playthrough. The only example of that is Mischievous, which I backported a long time ago. Sabrina ends up causing some problems for Cloyster here. I badge boost with Withdraw on the Kadabra, hopefully avoiding Kinesis. I didn't want to set up on the Abra because getting hit by Flash over and over didn't make sense. Unfortunately for Cloyster, the Kadabra does choose Kinesis twice. Because of this, I end up taking 1 loss. But when the Kadabra doesn't end up choosing Kinesis, I'm able to badge boost so that I have 148 speed, outspeeding the Alakazam. This way I can use Clamp to trap it and knock it out easily. There's only 1 gym leader left, and there is the potential for Cloyster to lose here despite its type advantage over Giovanni. The reason is the Dugtrio is very fast. It has 133 speed. I think if I used my rare candies right now, there might be the potential to move first against it, but I don't want to burn them this early into a run using a slow growth rate Pokemon. Let's see if Cloyster can pull this off at level 45, underspeeding the Dugtrio and the Persian. Dugtrio is first, and it has two moves that I'm scared of. Sand Attack, because it will lower my chances of winning for the rest of the fight, and Fissure, because it will instantly knock Cloyster out. Thing is, Giovanni is sponsored by Guard Spec, and his contract with them clearly means that he has to use the Guard Spec at least once during battle. Luckily for me, he does it right here on the Dugtrio so it never attacks and Surf one-shots. Persian's next. While it is going to use Screech, this actually doesn't matter because then I can just use Withdraw, setting my defense back up, badge boosting my special multiple times. Also, now I'm faster than the Persian, and I can use Surf to knock it out in 2 turns. Despite the fact that Cloyster is low on HP now, it doesn't matter because I'm going to one-shot both the Nidoqueen and the Nidoking. Then I level up into the Rhydon, but I have 4 times damage against it with Surf. So this was an easy battle brought to us by Guard Spec. But the easy battles are not going to continue. The rival on Route 22 is actually brutal for Cloyster. Here, I'm able to knock out both the Sandslash and the Execute in single hits. And then on the Cloyster, I wanted to set up with Withdraw, thinking that I might as well badge boost myself now, but then I realized Cloyster is about to level up after it defeats the Cloyster. So if I knock it out, then I level up, losing my badge boosts right before the Magneton. Luckily, I outspeed, so Clamp can be the solution here. But when it misses, Magneton just paralyzes Cloyster with Thunder Shock, and that's that after 3 hits from the electric move. So why is this fight brutal? Well, Clamp keeps missing on the Magneton. It is so frustrating. I get paralyzed again. This time the Kadabra does damage and then the Flareon finishes Cloyster. Eventually though, Clamp is going to work. I didn't think training or switching up my strategy really made sense at this point in the run, but it fails for a 3rd time, and that is a 3rd reset for Cloyster here. So I did decide to change my strategy. With the slow growth rate, if I use only 1 rare candy, then I'm not going to level up mid-battle. I can set up with Withdraw on the Cloyster while it spams Supersonic. After that, I will have massive damage for the Magneton, and hopefully I can just knock it out very quickly. I still use Clamp. I don't know if this is the best choice, but it ends up working out for me. After that, I use Surf, 2-shotting the Kadabra and 1-shotting the final Flareon. Inside Victory Road, I do some optional training. This is by far the most experience-rich portion of the game to train in. I fight trainers until I get to level 50, and then prior to Lorelei, I use 8 rare candies, boosting Cloyster to level 58. But before fighting the Elite Four, we need to catch up with Dewgong. On my way to Cinnabar Island, I fight Psyche. This gives Dewgong enough experience to level up to 44, where it can learn Rest, one of my favorite moves. I'm going to teach this in the place of Headbutt, since I haven't been using that move for a significant period of time. Inside the mansion, you can see that Dewgong is level 44, so it's blocking 1 more Raticate, leaving only the level 46 Raticate with a chance to show up. It doesn't though, so like Cloyster, no wild encounters here, slowing Dewgong down. But speaking of things that slowed Cloyster down, we have to face Blaine next. I only have Bubble Beam because I am refusing to teach Surf. I need that move slot for later on. Things do not start well. At the beginning of the battle, Ninetales confuses Dewgong. It hits itself. Then I get burned by Flamethrower, and everything essentially spirals out of control before I knock out his first Pokemon. I have only 20 HP left over for the Rapidash. Dewgong hits itself, Rapidash uses Fire Spin, and that's 1 reset. The first one of this playthrough. Up until now, Dewgong has been amazing, but Blaine is committed to making things awful for it. Ninetales goes for Flamethrower, doing about half before I knock it out. Rapidash just uses Growl, but I wasn't going to be using Body Slam anyway because the Arcanine has Reflect, so using physical moves doesn't make any sense, plus Bubble Beam does way more damage in this case. However, Arcanine just comes out, easily tanks a Bubble Beam. It looks like it's going to take 3 to knock Blaine's Ace out. Then it uses Fire Blast, gets a critical hit, and Dewgong faints again. In the 3rd fight, I take a slightly different approach using Rest on the Rapidash. It can use Fire Spin, which would help me wake up quickly and heal a bunch of my health. This is essentially what happens. It misses Fire Spin, then misses Takedown, uses Stomp the turn I knock it out, so I take a little bit of damage before the Arcanine. But then it helps me. It goes for Takedown, dealing recoil damage to itself, and after that, 2 Bubble Beams are able to finish it off with Dewgong surviving Flamethrower. Unlike with Cloyster, Dewgong has less issues against Sabrina because I outspeed the Abra. I can one-shot with Body Slam. Then, the Kadabra gets a miracle Psywave. It does half damage. I cannot believe that. Body Slam then paralyzes, and I knock it out over 2 turns. Alakazam's last. She uses her X Defend here, but Dewgong paralyzes once again. After that, I go for Ice Beam, Beam, which is going to two-shot Alakazam from here. However, it chooses Psychic on its last turn in battle. This does a lot of damage, also lowering Dewgong's special, but not enough for Alakazam to survive the next hit. Okay, if you've been watching in the background, please check out this Giovanni fight. This kind of thing only happens once in a while. Against his Persian, he uses a guard spec. This is actually bad for me, even though I freeze the Persian. This is also bad for me. So I got good luck there, essentially, which ends up being bad because Nidoqueen comes out next. Then, against it, I Gen 1 miss an Ice Beam. It uses Double Kick, inflicting a little bit of damage. On the next turn, I go for Ice Beam. I roll a low damage range. Nidoqueen survives, uses Thunder, and gets a critical hit. So why was all the stuff against the Persian bad luck, even though it appeared to be good luck? Well, because if Persian uses Screech, then it badge boosts Dewgong. After that, Giovanni can use his guard spec, that's fine. Then I have more damage for the Nidoqueen, and I can simply one-shot it using Ice Beam. I thought the Nidoking would also go down to one hit, but it just barely survives. Luckily for me, Giovanni uses his signature guard spec. Rhydon's last, but I have Bubble Beam here, so I easily one-shot. Okay, final split before the league. Dewgong's going up against the rival. One-shot the Sandslash with Ice Beam, as well as the Execute. Then on the Cloyster, things slow down because I have to use Bubble Beam here to 4-shot. I can't set up unless I taught Mimic now and stole Withdraw, so I'm at the mercy of Magneton. Is it going to use Thunder Wave? And the answer is no. It's just going to use Thunder Shock, doing almost no damage, and then I knock it out. Body Slam takes care of Kadabra, although it does take 2 hits, and I take a lot of damage in the process, having only 16 HP left over for the Flareon. Here's the thing with Dewgong, this doesn't matter. Even if I'm not going to 2-hit with Bubble Beam, I can simply rest, get hit by Fire Spin, which helps me wake up more quickly, and then use Bubble Beam to 2-shot the Flareon, easily surviving Flamethrower. With Rival 6 out of the way, let's compare the splits. 44 minutes and 9 seconds for Cloyster, and 37 minutes and 52 seconds for Dewgong. The medium fast growth rate Pokemon is now 6 minutes and 17 seconds in the lead. If we look back through all the other splits in the run, Dewgong has slowly been gaining an advantage, with a big spike up around Erica, and then small incremental gains until Rival 6. From here on out, things are going to have to go wrong for Dewgong, otherwise Cloyster is just not going to stand a chance. In Victory Road, I almost skipped all optional training. However, at the very end of the area, I fight the one trainer who has 3 grass types, just so I can level up to 50 prior to the league. Then I use Rare Candies, bringing Dewgong all the way up to level 60 prior to Lorelei. But there are 2 more things I need to do. I've been referring to the fact that I have a late game plan throughout this entire run. Now I'm going to reveal what it is. Hilariously, I end up teaching Surf in the place of Bubble Beam, so I didn't need that move slot after all, and I could have had Surf this entire time. That's just a first playthrough mistake. I thought that I was going to want to hold on to Rest throughout the late game, but now I don't think I need to. So in addition to correcting my mistake from earlier, I am also going to teach 2 other moves. Mimic in the place of Rest, and then finally TM7 Horn Drill in the place of Body Slam. Now I'm ready to take on Lorelei. But before we get to see how Horn Drill is going to do against her, let's see how Cloyster fares. In this case, I want to do damage on the first turn so that Dewgong goes to sleep when it uses Rest. This buys me a little bit more time to spam Withdraw. Lorelei's Dewgong has special AI, so 2 out of 5 turns, it's going to view all of its moves as neutrally effective. This could cause problems. If it uses Bubble Beam, it can drop my speed, which it already has, and it could also use Aurora Beam and drop my attack, which in this case would be irrelevant and just badge boost all of my other moves because I only have special damage for this fight. My goal is to not fall under 120 speed, ensuring that I'll outspeed all of Lorelei's Pokemon. And I want to maximize my badge boosts here so that I have as much damage as possible throughout the remainder of the fight. I don't have to worry about Dewgong constantly using Rest because I can use Clamp to trap it and then knock it out. Clamp is also my go-to move against the Cloyster. However, I miss and then I'm confused and it takes a while to finally hit and knock it out. Next is Slowbro. Clamp is doing surprising damage, plus it's avoiding the Slowbro using Amnesia, which would be devastating. I take it down, move on to the Jinx, which I can use Surf to knock out, and then all that's left is Lapras. With my badge boosts intact, I can do a lot of damage with Surf, and it only takes 3 turns to knock out. Plus, the moves it's choosing against me are only Body Slam and Confuse Ray. Cloyster has nothing to worry about now that it's set up with Withdraw. This guy, He's really bad. I sweep his entire team. There's nothing to worry about. I guess the Machamp would have survived, but in this case, Cloyster gets a critical hit and it goes down in one turn too. Agatha ends up being a really long and annoying fight. I'm using Clamp against the Gengar to knock it out since Cloyster is faster, but then she switches, breaking my trap combo. Also, Churro really wants to comment on this fight. He's making a ton of noise in the background right now. Luckily, Golbat's a one-shot with Ice Beam. Then she sends in Gengar again. I decided to set up Withdraw here. She switches to Haunter, giving me one free turn of setup, and then I knock out this Ghost using Clamp and Surf. Gengar comes back in, Clamp misses. It then uses Lick and paralyzes Cloyster. I hate this status condition. It is so frustrating to play when paralyzed, especially when using Clamp, a move that is good when you outspeed the opponent. The reason that Cloyster is about to win is purely because Agatha is really bad sometimes. In this case, she's using her super potions when she really shouldn't. Instead, she should be attacking with a move like Mega Drain, which the first Gengar does have. I knock it out, move on to the next Gengar. In this case, it just goes for Dream Eater, then Cloyster gets a critical hit and knocks it out. Last is Arbok, but it's pretty bad, so that's that for Agatha. It was a long one, but I still won. Okay, Lance. When you have an Ice type, Lance is not very good. The only problem here is that I'm not faster than the Aerodactyl by default, so I wanted to set up withdraws to ensure that that happens. This comes at the cost of a lot of Cloyster's health. Hyper Beam from Gyarados gets a critical hit. And then I miss the Gyarados using Clamp. I don't think I should be doing this. I should probably be attacking with Ice Beam. The reason I'm trying to go for Clamp is because I think the Gyarados will knock me out if it attacks again. I weaken it with Clamp and then knock it out with Ice Beam. From there, Ice Beam one-shots Dragonair 1 and Dragonair 2. I could have used Surf for a little bit more damage against Aerodactyl, but Ice Beam still gets the job done. Less clicks with the D-pad because I didn't have to reposition my cursor. Last is Dragonite, and Ice Beam also finishes it in one hit. Cloyster is ready for the champion. Okay, back to what we all want to see, the Horn Drill strategy against Lorelei. The reason I'm doing this is because Dewgong is not going to be able to knock out her Pokemon very quickly with Surf or Ice Beam. Using Body Slam wouldn't really work. It would also be slow, and I'm worried that I wouldn't have enough damage to 3-shot the Dewgong. With Horn Drill though, I can make this fight very quick, provided I one-shot all of her team members. Dewgong goes down right away on the first turn, then Cloyster is able to use Spike Cannon for a little bit. It also confuses me with Supersonic. It looks like things are about to go wrong, but then Horn Drill hits and Cloyster goes down. Slowbro's next. Here is where Mimic comes into play. I can steal Amnesia and then set this move up. It's a bit scary because Slowbro is also setting up with Amnesia, and it could go for Psychic, dealing a lot of damage to Dewgong. But instead it just spams Amnesia over and over again, giving me free setup, and then I knock it out. Jinx comes out next. I was worried about Lovely Kiss, but no, Surf is doing enough damage to one-shot. But that's not true for the Lapras because it resists the Water-type move. It survives with red health, goes for Body Slam, and just barely doesn't knock out Dewgong. So I overcome Lorelei on my first attempt against her. Next, I have a free win. Then I face Agatha. Because I have Mimic, I can steal Substitute from the first Gengar and neutralize all confusion and poison-based tactics. Her Haunter and final Gengar can still hit me with Hypnosis though, and the Arbok can hit Dewgong with Glare. But I don't really think those are going to be the things that I have to worry about. Plus, this fight starts out going really well. I do damage to the first Gengar, she switches it out, I knock out the Golbat, then knock out the first Gengar. I can't be paralyzed by Lick from the Haunter, so it goes down over 2 turns. I still have my Substitute in place by the time the Arbok comes in, which I easily one-shot using Ice Beam. And now, on the last Gengar, it just goes for Dream Eater when I'm awake. Then it chooses Psychic, and I thought this was the end for my Substitute, but hilariously, Dewgong's sub survives and I knock the Gengar out. That was a really easy battle. And Lance, of course, is even easier. This time around I can't set up, so I'm not going to outspeed the Aerodactyl, but I 2-shot the Gyarados, 1-shot both of the Dragonairs, and then the Aerodactyl does pathetic damage with Wing Attack anyway. Dragonite's a 1-hit. I use my final Rare Candy, boosting Dewgong to level 64, and now I'm ready for the final battle. Are you ready to get frustrated? Because I certainly wasn't. I thought Dewgong was going to do pretty well against the champion. But you know what I'm not remembering? my Seal playthrough from all those years ago. Seal really frustrated me, and I ended up quitting doing the run for about a week until I eventually came back to it because the champion was so awful to make consistent. I'm sure a lot of my longtime viewers are surprised that I haven't mentioned this run until now in the video. Well, check out what happens with Dewgong here against the champion. Right away I get poisoned by the Sand Slash, which isn't a good way to start things. Then the Alakazam goes for Psychic, luckily not dropping my special. I use Earthquake, which I mimicked from Sand Slash. That's the whole reason that I got poisoned in the first place. I wanted something to solve the Magneton later in the fight, but this physical move isn't strong enough to knock out the Alakazam, so it's able to use Kinesis, lowering my accuracy. This takes Horn Drill down to a 19% chance to hit, by the way, which kind of will be relevant for fights in the future. In this case, I'm able to use Ice Beam to one-shot the following Exeggutor, although I got lucky there with a critical hit. It should have been a two-shot. Now, let's see how much damage Earthquake does from a level 64 Dewgong against a level 61 Magneton. Remember, in Gen 1, Magneton is not a Steel type, it's a mono-electric type, so it's able to survive. The champion uses his rare Full Restore, I re-roll damage with Earthquake, and it doesn't do enough for a second time. Then Magneton chooses Thunderbolt. It doesn't knock Dewgong out. That's a good sign, but I miss my Earthquake, and then poison damage plus another Thunderbolt gets Dewgong. Okay, the losing isn't over. This time when I'm mimicking Earthquake from Sand Slash, it chooses its own Earthquake, getting a critical hit, doing more than half to Dewgong, putting me in a bad position for the remainder of the fight. Luckily, Alakazam gifts me with a knockout, choosing Recover 2 times in a row, once even when it was on full health. Now, Exeggutor, I get another critical hit. That's really convenient. It's gonna use Leech Seed on me when it eventually survives. But I need a way to solve the Magneton, and obviously Earthquake is not it. If it chooses Thunder Wave, then it's going to attack with Thunderbolt on the next turn anyway and do massive damage. So I'm going to chance things here with a Horn Drill. And of course, it misses. Fight number 3. This one is going better. I don't get poisoned by the Sand Slash, and it only does a tiny amount of damage with Poison Sting. I then use Ice Beam on the Alakazam because I could potentially freeze it and avoid one hit by doing this. But the Exeggutor this time around survives, sets up Leech Seed before I knock it out. Now, Horn Drill hits the Magneton, so I one-shot and move on to the Cloyster. Problem here is that I need to knock it out quickly. I'm going to be taking damage every turn from Leech Seed and chip damage from Spike Cannon. I figured the fastest way to take care of it would be using Horn Drill. If Surf is going to 3-shot with the downside of the champion using a Full Restore to heal the Cloyster, then if Horn Drill has 30% accuracy, if I use it 3 times in a row, I'm probably going to knock out the Cloyster. But I just keep missing, and the champion defeats me again. I assume a bunch of you are getting frustrated watching me chance things with Horn Drill, so let's try another frustrating strategy. I teach Rest in the place of Horn Drill. Now I can heal, which seems like it would give me the win, but there are other problems. I can get hit by Kinesis on the Alakazam, and that basically makes Rest irrelevant. While I can chance things and have a longer fight, it's not really the solution that I want, especially if the Exeggutor is going to be able to set up Leech Seed. But I'm able to get around that by the champion using a Full Restore and then rolling better damage on the second turn, knocking it out in a single hit. So I move on to Magneton, but here, if Earthquake doesn't knock it out in one shot, then it will attack once, either with Thunder Wave or Thunderbolt, and if it goes for Thunder Wave, like I said before, it will just use Thunderbolt right away on the next turn, doing damage. So I would need to have enough damage to knock the Magneton out in a single hit, or enough health to survive one Thunderbolt, but I don't survive one Thunderbolt, so that's another reset. I'm gonna go back to the Horn Drill strategy. I actually prefer it in this case. That shows my character development since I first started this channel. A long time ago, I would have far preferred the Rest strategy, but now I prefer taking control of things and always being on the offense. But this doesn't go well for me. I take damage from Sand Slash and 2 hits from Alakazam, leaving Dewgong with red health by the time Exeggutor comes in. One thing I could be doing here to make this grass type a little bit more consistent would be teaching Blizzard in the place of Ice Beam. Luckily, it misses its Leech Seed and I knock it out over 2 turns. This is pretty good. Okay, Horn Drill, please come through for me. It does, one-shotting the Magneton. Cloyster's next, I go for Horn Drill again. This needs to hit. And it does. So I've made it to the Flareon. Here I had to choose between Surf and Earthquake. Surf has higher effective power, but Flareon has lower defense. In the end, I did decide to go for Surf since I get the same type attack bonus with it. And it is able to do enough damage to the fire type. Dewgong clocks in with a first playthrough time of 47 minutes and 48 seconds, with 7 resets at level 65. It got a game time of 2 hours and 52 minutes. With Cloyster, I am about to see a new interaction that I've never seen before in Pokemon Yellow. yellow. I one-shot the Sandslash using Surf, then on Alakazam it uses Psychic. I'm trying to knock it out with Clamp, then I use Surf, it's using Recover, and eventually it gets in 1 Kinesis. This does badge boost Cloyster, which is kind of useful. Next on Executor, I know that it's going to spam Leech Seed over and over, thinking it's a super effective grass move. So I can take my time here setting up with Withdraw. This is the new interaction. I didn't know that when your defense stat maxes out, the game no longer lets you set up stage modifiers. This is the case in Generation 2, but I've just never seen that play out in Generation 1. So here when I get to +5 with Cloyster, I am no longer able to set up +6 because my defense stat is 999. This means I lose out on 1 potential badge boost, and that has implications for my damage ranges. Magneton's next. Ice Beam one-shots. That's really convenient. Now against Cloyster, I'm going to have to knock it out more slowly using something like Clamp or Surf. But Clamp isn't a great option if Executor has set up Leech Seed, which it has. So I'm trying to use Surf, but because of Kinesis, I just miss over and over again. And it's so painful watching his Cloyster knock me out slowly using Spike Cannon, which does pathetic damage every turn because of my outrageous defense stat. I get 1 Surf in, it does more than half to the Cloyster, but that's not enough, so I take a loss here. In the next battle, I make it by the Alakazam without getting hit by Kinesis. This is good in some ways, but I also don't have the extra badge boost, and after 5 turns of Withdraw, my damage is going to be less when using Ice Beam. This has an impact against the Magneton because Ice Beam is unable to one-shot. The electric type survives on a Sliver, uses Thunder Wave, and then uses Thunderbolt. Cloyster's comparatively low special here is a problem. I'm down on orange health by the time I move on to the Cloyster. And once again with paralysis and low health, I'm not in a good position here. But I am able to hit 2 Surfs because I wasn't hit by Kinesis. So it goes down and I make it to the final Flareon. But due to type effectiveness, it's either going to choose Fire Spin or Flamethrower. Unless it misses, I'm going to lose. And it doesn't. I hate that this is the solution for Cloyster. I just one-hit the Magneton with a better damage roll so it's never able to paralyze me. Then with green health, I 2-shot the Cloyster, move on to the Flareon with a lot of health and my speed intact. I'm able to move first with badge boosts because of my slow growth rate, and Surf one-shots the fire type. Cloyster clocks in with a much worse first playthrough time, 54 minutes and 40 seconds, with 10 resets at level 63. This is a game time of 3 hours and 12 minutes. Let's put these metrics side by side. Dewgong finished the game 6 minutes and 51 seconds faster in the first playthrough, and it had 3 less resets. Both of the Pokemon had 0 resets. Dewgong finished with a game time that was 19 minutes faster, but Cloyster was able to edge out in 1 metric. It finished the game 2 levels lower because of its slow growth rate. Looking at the timelines for these playthroughs, we can see that Cloyster started to lose time during the mid-game. The Erica split is so much longer. After that, it wasn't able to gain back time, even though the champion split was shorter. I'll also show you the level by trainer graph so you can see how the slow growth rate impacts these runs. Cloyster is consistently at a lower level throughout every stage of the game, despite the fact that with it, I was actually doing more training when compared with Dewgong. At this point in my process, things were looking pretty bleak for the defensive Pokemon, but now it's time to get into the optimized playthroughs and see what I was able to do to improve their results. I want to give a huge shout out here to ZealousPawn for helping me optimize these Pokemon. I sat down, looked at his routes, and I couldn't really come up with much off the top of my head that would improve them, so I decided to go in and just play them as they were. As I got used to playing them, I think I made some small tweaks, but overall this is ZealousPawn's work in terms of routing. I wanted to make one major change late into the Dewgong playthrough, and I'll talk about that when we get to the champion. For now, let's dive in because I think these strategies are fantastic for both of these Pokemon. With Dewgong, we first need to discuss 2 alternative strategies that this Pokemon has available to it. In the first playthrough, I went with the Horn Drill strategy for the late game. But there is of course another alternative which you might prefer as a player. That is to use Blizzard for more damage and then just secure good damage ranges against all of the Pokemon on the champion's team. I prepared this graphic to give you an example of what Dewgong might need in order for this strategy to work. At level 65, if it mimics Earthquake, it still can't one-shot the Magneton. Earthquake does between 79 and 94% damage. There are some upsides to doing things at this level though, like you're gonna one-shot the Executor when using Blizzard, but that's really the only Pokemon that the Ice-type move is useful against. Surf covers the Sandslash, and you're probably gonna run Surf with this strategy. You're gonna 2-shot the Alakazam with Earthquake, which is kind of unfortunate, exposing you to Kinesis. Then the Cloyster will be a 3-hit using Surf, and the Flareon only has an 82% chance of fainting when you use the water type move. Earthquake is worse in this scenario. It has a 55.7% chance to one-shot the Flareon. And without the ability to mimic a move that allows you to set up with Dewgong, or a natural move that could be used for badge boosting, this is about as good as the damage ranges are gonna get. So what I think it really comes down to here is if you're gonna use Blizzard against the champion, you need a way to solve the Magneton. And you're gonna do that with Hypnosis. Mimic it from Executor, knock the Alakazam out with 2 hits from Blizzard, that's an 83.5% chance, and then on Magneton, put it to sleep with Hypnosis and knock it out over 2 turns with Blizzard. One important small detail here to look at is at level 65, Dewgong speed ties the Alakazam. I could use more Carbos to ensure that you're outspeeding at that point in the game, but if you want to move twice first against the Alakazam, you're gonna need level 65. So cutting levels is gonna impact Dewgong's ability to defeat the Alakazam without Kinesis or a special drop from Psychic significantly. One thing I find really interesting about the Blizzard damage ranges here is if you go all the way down to level 58, Blizzard is still 2-shotting the Alakazam. Now it's 2-shotting the Executor, but that's not really a problem, and it is still able to 2-shot the Magneton. The alternative approach to this is the faster theoretical approach, which is just using Horn Drill like I was before. It can knock out the Executor, the Magneton, and the Cloyster far faster than any of Dewgong's other options. Also, if we just pause briefly and look at Dewgong's moveset during this theoretical battle at level 58, it's Blizzard, Hypnosis, Rest, and Surf. Why not just switch Surf out for Horn Drill? In that case, I have the chance to one-shot the Cloyster, saving a decent amount of time later into the fight. I can still have Hypnosis, and I can also have Blizzard to deal significant damage to the champion's Pokemon. The more and more you dig into Dewgong theoretically, the more and more it seems that Horn Drill is the solution. While it's inconsistent, and it's definitely frustrating, it gives Dewgong the best possible chance in setting a ridiculously fast time in Yellow version. So for my follow-up playthroughs, I'm gonna be playing the Horn Drill strategy again. Okay, let's get into this run. First question, does it make sense to fight Brock on minimum battles? If I do, there are quite a few implications. Here are the damage ranges against Brock starting at level 6. I only have a 2-shot on the Geodude, and I could 2-shot the Onix, losing 2 turns in battle there. Fighting the Junior Trainer gets me to level 8, and then both of Brock's Pokemon are guaranteed 1-hits. By the way, fighting the Junior Trainer also helps speed up battles on Route 3. For example, this Bug Catcher, without the Junior Trainer, I have a 49% chance to one-shot his Caterpie and a 2-hit on the Metapod. But with the Junior Trainer, now I one-shot both of his Pokemon consistently. In the past, I've talked about the snowballing effect of early experience, and this is exactly what I'm referring to. When you do a little bit of training early on, especially if it's very efficient training, then you make it through future battles, saving time. These Pokemon are never going to get the chance to use String Shot or Harden, wasting frames. Like I said before, Water Gun doesn't make any sense for Dewgong, so I'm going to be skipping this TM in Mount Moon. I am also going to battle the Hiker here, which is going to help me get to level 18 before Misty's first Pokemon. But really the goal of fighting him, as well as the Junior Trainer, is to synergize together so that we get to level 25 over a damage rounding threshold before fighting Lieutenant Surge. While he's really inconsistent, I do want the level boost there just to ensure that I have good damage ranges against him, because when the Raichu is spamming Thunderbolt, it's very terrifying. Immediately upon arriving in Cerulean City, I'm going to go to Nugget Bridge and fight the rival. I'm doing this without a heal because Dewgong doesn't need it. Aurora Beam is enough for this battle. Also, I do want to note that I've only healed 1 time in this playthrough, and that was outside of Mount Moon. Upon defeating the rival, I head straight for the gym without healing. The best strategy here for Dewgong is by far using Bide against the Starmie. From here, minimum battles until the SSN. I grab the TM for Body Slam, as well as the Rare Candy. Then, after defeating the rival, Dewgong will be level 25 for Surge. This is one of those battles that's frustrating in a solo run because it doesn't make sense to delay him for later. That bleeds time. It also doesn't make sense to level up more because he's pretty bad. Mostly just random, actually. He can beat Dewgong. And in this playthrough, he doesn't beat me once. He beats me not 2 times, but a total of 3 times. After beating him, I am still 2 minutes and 4 seconds ahead of my first Dewgong playthrough, and I was roughly on time with all of my follow-up runs, so I felt like continuing wasn't that bad because I can still get a good late game, and I require a lot of luck there with Horn Drill, so I pushed forward. Just to do a brief post-mortem on that battle, Body Slam is going to 3-hit the Raichu. It only has a 6.4% chance to 2-shot. Thunderbolt does between 69 and 82% damage, which is not nice. With the damage from Mega Punch being 22 to 27%, basically if he attacks you with Thunderbolt and then attacks one more time with another move, you're going to lose. And Dewgong's slower than the Raichu, so he's going to be able to attack 3 times, provided that Body Slam doesn't inflict paralysis. With Dewgong, we are going to go into the Rocket Hideout to collect the rare candy. Then I teach Ice Beam and I face Erica next. It's important to teach Ice Beam prior to this battle because Aurora Beam's damage ranges really aren't that good. It's going to two-shot all 3 of her Pokemon, and that would give Weepinbell and Gloom chances to use Sleep Powder or Stun Spore. We don't want that to be the case. With Ice Beam, I have a 93.4% chance to one-shot the Weepinbell and a guarantee on the Gloom. The rival in Pokemon Tower, I really want to show you these damage ranges. It is so satisfying. Ice Beam one-shots every single one of his Pokemon. For Agatha Jr., Ice Beam has a guaranteed one-shot on both of her Ghastly, and then the Chandlers further up the tower, which have higher level Ghastly, I only have a 91% chance to knock out their Pokemon. This is where experience rooting gets very precise. In Silph, we fight the Machoke Rocket to get access to 1 more rare candy. Now I have a total of 6. Then if I go down to the 9th floor, walk all the way to the right, all the way to the bottom, and then fight the Triantist, I will level up to 34. I can use 6 rare candies to then be level 40 to fight Rival 5. No backtracking in and out of Silph required. Ice Beam one-shots the Sandslash. I'm going to 4-hit the Cloyster in most cases, but I do have a 35.6% chance upside to 3-hit. Magneton's going to be a 2-hit. Right before the Kadabra, Dewgong levels up. By the way, the reason I'm speed tying the Kadabra is just because I have a Carbos in my bag that I forgot to use. It's the one from beside the Machoke Rocket. Anyway, if I had used that, I would have outsped the Kadabra. That was the plan. Either way, Body Slam is a 1-hit here, so it's really not that dangerous. After that, Flareon takes 2 hits from Bubble Beam, and that's that for the rival. With him out of the way, Dewgong is now 6 minutes and 56 seconds ahead of its first playthrough time. Now once again, experience rooting is going to get very precise. After defeating Giovanni, I am almost level 43. On Cycling Road, I'm going to fight 2 trainers, Double Weezing and Biker Boss, of course. This levels Dewgong up to 44, where I learn Rest in the place of Aurora Beam. By the way, I did experience with picking up the Rest TM and learning it through Level Up as well. That's something I'll talk about later during the league. When I arrive in Fuchsia City, I go straight to the gym. I fight both the Tamers here for extra experience and then take on Koga at level 45. Guaranteed 1 hit on the first Venonat, an 89% chance on the second one, a 58% chance on the third one, and then a 3-shot on the Venomoth with an upside for a 25.5% chance to 2-hit. Finishing this brings Dewgong to level 46, enough to block all the encounters in the Safari Zone. However, it's not quite enough to block all the encounters in Pokemon Mansion, but I have 2 rare candies in my bag, so I use them on Dewgong to go up to level 48. This blocks all the encounters in Pokemon Mansion and gives me access to 2 more rare candies, which I use prior to taking on Blaine. Hilariously, if Surge is the first concession of this route where you can lose frequently, Blaine is the second one. Bubble Beam is going to 2-shot all of his Pokemon. Flamethrower from Ninetales does between 25 and 30% damage. Fire Blast from the Arcanine does between 32 and 38% damage. I really do like Dewgong's odds here, especially because it's outspeeding all of his Pokemon. I end up getting 1 reset here because the Rapidash gets a critical hit with Takedown, giving the Arcanine the KO range when it uses Fire Blast. Well, it also crit, which is not good news. If he had chosen any of his other moves with Arcanine, then Dewgong would have survived and beat Blaine on its first attempt. So 3 resets to Surge and 1 reset to Blaine. It's pretty frustrating, but I kept going. I am 4 minutes and 53 seconds ahead of my first playthrough time, and I was on track to clock in with roughly the same time that I was getting ordinarily with Dewgong at this point in the playthroughs. Because of damage ranges against Giovanni, I 1-hit all of his Pokemon with the exception of the Persian, which is a 2-shot. I don't think it makes sense to level up more here to try and outspeed the Dugtrio and the Persian. Just take the chance. If he uses Fissure turn 1, then reset quickly and try again. Against Rival 6, maybe a year or 2 ago, I probably would have played more conservatively, teaching Mimic in the place of one of my moves, then trying to steal Cloyster's Withdraw, setting up prior to the Magneton, and knocking it out with 1 hit if possible. But I don't think that that's the best strategy here. You can just 2-shot the Magneton. It should be fine. Dewgong has enough bulk to then survive hits from the Kadabra and the Flareon, even if it gets paralyzed. Plus, Magneton's Thundershocks really don't do very much damage here. In this case, I make it by the rival on my first attempt, although there is some potential to get a reset here if you get unlucky. Okay, this is where the playthrough gets really awful or really fun, depending on how you look at it. For me, it's really fun because I never use Horn Drill. So it's time to drill away at Lorelei's water ice types. I can knock out Dewgong, Cloyster, and Slowbro using Horn Drill, and then I'm going to use Body Slam for the Jinx. Unfortunately, it puts me to sleep with Lovely Kiss, and Dewgong snoozes for way too long. Jinx gets the knockout with Thrash. Losing in this way to Lorelei is really unfortunate, and I have to say this is normally not how I lose. I normally lose when I make it to the Lapras if I run out of Horn Drill PP and then have to knock it out with Body Slam. Sometimes Lapras will then paralyze you with Body Slam and confuse you with Confuse Ray, and you're not able to use Rest. This is what happens in the next battle. So you're probably looking at this right now and thinking, Scott, why aren't you just restarting? This run seems really bad. And yes, it is really bad. But the worst part of the entire run is still coming up. The champion is by far the least consistent battle for Dewgong in this entire playthrough. But to get to him, I have to get through Agatha. Now, I do want to give you a warning. If you're going to do this playthrough yourself at home, do not go into this fight with the moveset that I currently have. Ice Beam, Body Slam, Rest, and Horn Drill. This makes absolutely no sense. What you want to do here is you want to teach Blizzard in the place of Rest. This way, you have better damage ranges against the Gengar specifically. 3-hitting them using Ice Beam is just not good enough. The first one can use Mega Drain, and the second one can use Psychic and then lower your special. I tried this same strategy multiple times against Agatha to test its viability after doing this playthrough, because here I was making a split-second decision, trying to keep Rest until the champion, which could make him more manageable. Turns out this is not a good choice. In my testing, I lost over and over trying to rely on the Ice Beam strategy, and then as soon as I taught Blizzard, I won like 3 or 4 times in a row. Now I said earlier in the video that I did a total of 5 playthroughs with each of these Pokemon, so why are we watching Dewgong 4? Well, I came back and did a 5th playthrough with Dewgong, tried the Ice Beam strategy thinking maybe I could luck through Agatha, and now I had a ridiculous number of resets to her and then didn't get a personal best as a result. Thing is, if you are able to make it by Agatha with Ice Beam, then Lance is really easy. For speed, you can Horn Drill the Gyarados and then Ice Beam everything else on his team. This normally should be fine, but the Aerodactyl does outspeed you, and in this case, it chooses Hyper Beam, getting a lucky critical hit, knocking Dewgong out. The bad luck in this run just continues. It was so rare. I think this is my only reset to Lance doing all of the Dewgong playthroughs. Anyway, in the next battle, I just play a little bit more conservatively, healing on the second Dragonair, and then I knock out the Aerodactyl. After that, I finish off his Dragonite, and I'm still 5 minutes and 8 seconds ahead of my first playthrough time. Dewgong might be on track for a sub 40-minute time at this pace. So the champion, he's pretty bad. We're going to teach Blizzard in the place of Ice Beam. This allows me to one-shot the Sandslash. Then I have to use Body Slam to take out the Alakazam. While I'm doing that, I want to talk through the strategy that I should be using here against the champion. Blizzard, Body Slam, Mimic, and Horn Drill. The reason for Mimic is to steal Hypnosis from the Executor to then use it on the Magneton to avoid getting paralyzed, and to use it on the Cloyster to give me time to execute Horn Drill. Making Agatha more difficult without Blizzard means I have Rest for this battle now. The other option is what I mentioned on Cycling Road, which is the fact that you could pick up the Rest TM in the SSN, and then use it to teach it over Ice Beam prior to the champion. This would give you Blizzard for Agatha and then Rest for the champion. The thing is, this Rest strategy on the champion also just doesn't work out very well. It feels more consistent in some ways. You can always heal and keep the battle going. However, it doesn't really act that way in practice. In Generation 1, once you get paralyzed, your Pokemon's speed stat will never be recovered unless they can use Agility, which Dewgong can't. So if Magneton hits with Thunder Wave, then Horn Drill can do no damage, leaving you to use Body Slam or Blizzard or Ice Beam against the Cloyster, which is not a good prospect. That takes forever. Because Cloyster is spamming Spike Cannon and the Executor has likely set up Leech Seed, you're going to be stuck in a constant healing loop and you just can't make progress. I tested this fight a bunch of times as well against the champion, and I really didn't have that much success, but in this case with Dewgong, Horn Drill one-shots the Magneton, one-shots the Cloyster, and then I two-shot the Flareon with Blizzard, clocking in with a final time of 39 minutes and 16 seconds, with 7 resets at level 59, with a game time of 2 hours and 25 minutes. This run was 8 minutes and 32 seconds faster than my first playthrough. And of all the runs I did with Dewgong, this is the best time that I got. Ordinarily, it was getting a time around like 41 to 45 minutes. That seems to be the range that this strategy wants to perform in, but you can definitely push this time much lower. I can cut the 3 resets at Surge, the 1 reset at Blaine, 2 resets on Lorelei, fly, and definitely getting rid of the 1 reset on Lance wouldn't be a problem. But since Dewgong is relying on really sketchy strategies, it was often the case that I would make it to the champion with 1 or 2 resets, and then I would get like 5 to 10 resets against him, which makes the ending of the run extremely frustrating. Part of me wants to continue doing Dewgong playthroughs and try and get it a better time, but the other part of me thinks 39 minutes is probably good enough. This Pokemon is pretty inconsistent, and there aren't many options to make it more consistent without completely sacrificing the potential to get it under 40 minutes of time. So with this playthrough's result, Dewgong today is going to earn itself a placement in the S tier. Its time is just barely faster than Gengar's time of 39 minutes and 22 seconds. And it was just slightly slower than Slowbro. If you compare Slowbro and Dewgong, I think Dewgong could go slightly faster because it can get really lucky, whereas Slowbro is relying on amnesia and it's far more consistent. That said, if I had to pick between the two, I would definitely prefer Slowbro because it's never going to get a time significantly above 40 or 41 minutes. It's a really solid Pokemon. On the other hand, Dewgong's not the best water type. Poliwhirl is far better than it, and it's also not the best ice type. Articuno still was able to put out better results. That said, I think with good luck, Dewgong could potentially push its results lower than Articuno's, but then Articuno could also, with better luck, push its results lower than Dewgong's. Articuno did, after all, have 2 resets in its final playthrough. If you want to compare game time, Dewgong has a time of 2 hours and 25 minutes, whereas Articuno has a time of 2 hours and 28 minutes. That suggests that the legendary Pokemon might be a little bit slower at the theoretical peak performance for each Pokemon. However, I played Articuno a little while ago, and my overworld routing wasn't nearly as efficient. I think I could shave 3 minutes off of its time just coming back and playing it with modern knowledge. Here is the ideal route summary for Dewgong in case you want to play this playthrough yourself, and search for the sub 39 minute time, which is definitely possible. Okay, now enough of this post-run analysis, let's go in and see how Cloyster was able to do in its optimized playthrough. My first run with Cloyster made it feel like it's just not going to be able to compete with Dewgong or even get close. That said, ZealousPawn then posted his Cloyster results, and I was completely shocked. This water ice type is actually very capable, despite its slow growth rate. If I had to quickly summarize this run, it is essentially that the slow growth rate isn't holding Cloyster back because it has a way to play around it, either with Withdraw to boost its stats, or with Clamp to delete targets that would otherwise be impossible to knock out with regular damage ranges. This allows Cloyster to minimize the amount of training that it does throughout the run, saving a bunch of time. However, it does have a drawback, which is Clamp is not that consistent. So, just like with Dewgong, some of the battles end up taking a lot of luck. These two have very similar early games. Only the mandatory bug catcher in Viridian Forest, but then I do fight the junior trainer before absolutely destroying Brock. The next section of the game, Cloyster goes through with 1 less trainer. I'm not going to fight the hiker inside of Mount Moon. After defeating the rival and the junior trainer in Misty's gym, I take her on at level 16. Cloyster has 2 strategies available to it here. It can either use Supersonic to confuse the Starmie, hopefully giving it some extra time to use Aurora Beam to knock it out slowly, or Clamp. Both are kind of viable. I think Aurora Beam probably is slightly better because you can lower the Starmie's attack and then Cloyster takes even less damage. However, this has another effect, which is Starmie will deal less damage to itself in confusion, and Clamp can inflict a lot of damage per hit because it's trapping the opponent. So I chose to use Clamp here, and I am going for the Supersonic strategy. You might think Bide would be faster, but I tried it against Misty, and I had very bad luck with it. I kept losing over and over again, so eventually I just ditched that strategy and reverted back to Supersonic, which for me felt far more consistent. And that's a crazy statement to say. Consistent and Supersonic are like oil and water. They just shouldn't mix. On Route 25, I fight 1 additional trainer, this hiker with 3 Geodudes and 1 Machop. The reason I'm doing this is so that after the rival on the SSN, Cloyster levels up over a damage rounding threshold to 23. With Cloyster, you need to do everything possible to minimize the number of turns that Surge has in battle. Because Thunderbolt is an instant delete button. If Raichu uses it, Cloyster is going to faint. The base damage with the worst damage range from Thunderbolt is 112% of Cloyster's health. This does make every reset against him very fast. As soon as I see that he's used Thunderbolt, I'm just going to press the reset button and try again. I can see if you want to play very consistently all the time that you would want to backtrack to Surge after doing Celadon City to be a higher level, but overall, Cloyster's still not going to outspeed the Raichu. It is ridiculously fast with 65 speed, and right now I only have 47. I'm going to be roughly 2 levels higher with the slow growth rate once I make it through the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet, so I think it makes sense to fight him now and not backtrack. There's a lot of upside in doing this because if you win first attempt, then that's that. Just continue with the playthrough, you're going to have a good time. But in this case, I beat him after 3 resets, just like with Dewgong. By the way, this is my 5th Cloyster playthrough, and I was having so much bad luck with it. I complained to ZealousPawn a little bit in the group chat that we have managing this project. I was just like, I don't know how you found that Cloyster was really consistent, because that was not what I found in these playthroughs. I did not have fun playing Cloyster. I prefer playing Dewgong, and it's a Pokemon that runs Horn Drill. Now that I've said that, someone is going to accuse me of bias in the comments, and that's really not what this is. I am allowed to feel certain ways about playing certain Pokemon. Like, I never liked playing Seal. It wasn't fun. That doesn't mean I'm not trying my best with each Pokemon. Those two things can exist completely separate of each other. Okay, in the mid-game for Cloyster, we're going to go into the Rocket Hideout. This is for 2 purposes. Number 1, we want a rare candy because we're a slow growth rate. But number 2, we also want the Double Edge TM. This move, for me at least, has had its renaissance this year. I have found that it is useful in a bunch of scenarios. But for Cloyster, it's only going to be useful in a single scenario. After finishing off Pokemon Tower, I go to Cycling Road. Now, this is very precise. This is a strategy that I got from ZealousPawn. I really like it, and I'm going to be using it with future Pokemon. I want to fight the Double Weezing and the Biker boss to get experience, but I don't want to go into Fuchsia City because Cloyster's level is too low for the Safari Zone right now, and I might run into wild Pokemon. Each wild encounter you face wastes about 3 seconds if your inputs are on point. If they're not, it could waste 4 seconds. So if I got 2 or 3 encounters, I've wasted somewhere between 8 and 12 seconds. That just doesn't seem worth it if you can prevent it. So after Cycling Road, I go 1 step into Fuchsia City, securing myself the fly point to this location. Then I can simply fly back to Celadon City and take on Erica. Cloyster's damage ranges here are not as good as Dewgong's. 73.4% chance to one-hit the Weepinbell, and 88.9% chance to one-hit the Gloom. They're still really consistent though. After that, I head to Silph. One advantage of doing Cycling Road prior to coming here is that I have a total of 7 rare candies. Because of the slow growth rate, Cloyster is 1 level lower after it defeats the Machoke Rocket as well as the guy with Arbok. But at level 33, with 7 rare candies, I can go to level 40 prior to facing the rival in Silph. This is the one location where Double Edge ends up being useful, because you can set up Withdraw against his Cloyster essentially for free as it spams Supersonic. The more you raise your defense, the less damage Cloyster deals to itself in confusion, and the more time that you can waste until Supersonic wears off, and then you can knock out the Magneton very quickly using Double Edge, which has been badge boosted. I got an unlucky critical hit here, so Magneton is able to attack me. Still, I have enough health to survive the recoil damage from the Kadabra, and then I can use Clamp to trap the Flareon and knock it out. Okay, are you ready for the least consistent part of this run? At least in my experience. Next, we're gonna go to Koga's gym. This is so frustrating with Cloyster, by the way. So I should have taught Swift in the place of Double Edge, but I forgot in this playthrough. I'm not used to overwriting Double Edge with Swift. I'm not even really used to using Double Edge at this point on my channel. The reason I should have done this is because the Venomoth can use Double Team over and over again. And then if you don't have any way of attacking it consistently, it's just going to use Psychic, which does massive damage, 30 to 36%. There isn't really an opportunity for Cloyster to set up in this battle because you can't afflict the Venonats with status conditions. Unless you pick up Mimic and then you mimic Sleep Powder from the first Venonat and then use it on all the other Pokemon in the fight, but then this messes up your moveset for the remainder of the playthrough, making other battles just a little bit more messy and difficult. I didn't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to have to clamp down all of the Venonats and then knock out the Venomoth slowly. It is a 3-hit using Ice Beam. There's upside here for some critical hits along the way and also a freeze from Ice Beam, but there's also a lot of downside, like you miss Clamp and then you get hit by Sleep Powder and then knocked out by Psychic from a Venonat, which feels just completely wrong. I take 1 loss to the Venomoth, and then in the next battle, you can see that I reset right away as soon as Venonat uses Sleep Powder on Cloyster. Sometimes sleep lasts for a ridiculous amount of time, and I don't want to chance playing that battle and then just wasting more real time, but not making it further into the battle. Finally, on my 3rd attempt against him in this playthrough, I beat Koga. This one was frustrating. I hate this battle. At least in this case, I am ahead of my 3rd playthrough with Cloyster, which was my PB at this time. We've blurred out all the times after this, so it's not spoiling the final result. I am 31 seconds faster than my PB here. Still, even with the resets to Surge and Koga, I'm on track for a really good Cloyster time. So Swift is good against Koga, but it's also good against Sabrina, and this is the reason teaching it makes sense. If it was only good for Koga, it would probably just make more more sense to skip it and save a little bit of walking time. That said, in this case, I can use the withdraw flash interaction on Sabrina's Abra to set up as many times as I want, well, essentially 12 times, but I only need a total of 10 badge boosts. After that, I one-shot the Abra, the Kadabra, and the Alakazam. Now, I'm 1 minute and 23 seconds ahead of my former pace. Okay, prior to Blaine, 2 rare candies up to level 46. This lines things up for the late game because experience rooting is very important there. After all, this is a badge boosting Pokemon, and it is very important to not have mid-battle level ups, or you want to have mid-battle level ups exactly on the Pokemon that you want, like in Red and Blue, where I'm constantly trying to level up into the champions right on. In this case, Blaine is easier for Cloyster when compared with the Dewgong, which feels a little bit wrong since Cloyster has the lower special. However, I can just set up twice with withdraw, then I outspeed all of his Pokemon and Clamp knocks them out. To ensure that experience works out well, after beating the mandatory trainers inside of Giovanni's gym, I use 1 rare candy up to level 48. This is the last one for the entire playthrough. Giovanni is risky because Dugtrio can delete you with Fissure, but I'm going to set up withdraw here until I outspeed both the Dugtrio and the Persian. From there, I just sweep his team. That levels Cloyster up to level 49. This lines up my experience perfectly so that I level up after the rival's Flareon, ensuring that I keep my badge boosts through this entire battle. There are 2 places to set up in this fight, either on the Sandslash, which is in its weakest form in this battle. Its best move is Slash, which bypasses stat changes. The other place to set up is the Cloyster, which again is only going to be spamming Supersonic. I went for my setups on the Sandslash. Even if I take decent damage here, I can still squeeze through with a win using Clamp. Okay, time for Lorelei. For this one, I've taught Mimic. I also have Swift. ZealousPawn talked to me about this one. He said that Swift for him felt more consistent against Lorelei rather than using Double Edge. With Double Edge, you're constantly losing health, and if Lorelei is attacking you even occasionally and you lose health, then potentially you're not going to be able to finish her team with that physical move. Whereas Swift is always going to be able to win, especially once I set up with withdraw on the Dewgong and then later Amnesia on the Slowbro. I have had so many badge boosts by this point, but I lose them all right before the Lapras. However, with the Amnesia setup, I can then use Clamp to knock out her final Pokemon. This is where things get a little bit weird, because I haven't been using a lot of Surf in these playthroughs, but from here on out with Cloyster, Clamp just isn't that useful. So Surf in the place of Clamp and Blizzard in the place of Swift. If I came back to do this run again with Cloyster, I think I would change this decision making up just slightly. I would delay teaching Surf until after Agatha. I think having Clamp for her has more utility. If you set up with badge boosts, then you can outspeed all of her Pokemon and potentially chip away at the dangerous members of her team. It is possible to lose here, and I had many resets during my 5 Cloyster playthroughs. She caused so many problems just like Koga, but luckily in this playthrough, I didn't have a reset to her. So we're gonna crush Lance after that, of course. This one is really easy. You can set up on the Gyarados. After that, Blizzard basically just sweep through his entire team. It's really straightforward. With him out of the way, now it's time for the champion. This one is fairly straightforward as well. The Sandslash at the beginning of the fight gives you free opportunities, or almost free opportunities, to set up with withdraw. The only downside is if it poisons you very early into the fight. I found, in my experience, that playing out a battle once poisoned, especially early on, didn't make any sense. The key number of turns to set up here is 4. Then Earthquake is going to one-shot the Magneton. After that, you level up into the champion's Cloyster, and you can set up 2 more turns of withdraw here, ensuring that you'll one-shot the Flareon that's at the very end of the fight. Doing this, having only 1 reset on the champion and 6 resets in total, Cloyster clocks in with a final time of 42 minutes and 3 seconds at level 55, with a game time of 2 hours and 39 minutes. This result was 2 minutes and 27 seconds faster than my 3rd playthrough with Cloyster, and my 4th playthrough with Cloyster was worse because I got bad luck. Interestingly, these results earn Cloyster a placement close to another ice type, Lapras, right behind it in the A tier, and just ahead of another water type, Vaporeon. If we actually look at the A tier, it's kind of dominated by water types. Starmie, Lapras, Cloyster, Vaporeon, Seadra, Tentacruel, and Wartortle. That is 7 water types. And then the S tier contains 3 more. I find this next fact a little bit funny. The water type that is ranked lower than all of these is Poliwag, and it's only in the B tier. It is by far the best first stage Pokemon that I have used to date in Pokemon Yellow, and also in Pokemon Red, if you check out those streams regularly. By the way, I am streaming on most Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays this year if you want to check them out. I'm doing so many streams because I'm trying to beat red version with every single species and complete that tier list at the same time that I'm completing this tier list. I would really like by the end of 2025 to have good results that we can compare between both of these games. All the red playthroughs will be made into one giant video at the end of that project, and I'll probably do a giant wrap-up video for Pokemon Yellow as well. Okay, so that's it for Dewgong and Cloyster. In the end, Dewgong is superior, but Cloyster also gets really good results. And I'm sure you might be curious about what ZealousPawn's final result was. With Cloyster, he got a time of 40 minutes and 53 seconds. That's an absolutely outstanding result. So Cloyster can do better, but I'm not going to push it further. I did 5 full playthroughs with each of these Pokemon, and I had a bunch of failed attempts along the way. There are only 30 Pokemon left in Pokemon Yellow for me to rank. Some of them I have played before. There are only 9 species that I have never played in Pokemon Yellow before. Nidorina, Nidorino, Machoke, Graveler, Golduck, Kingler, Dodrio, Ditto, and Dragonite. So expect over the coming months for us to quickly make progress through all of that towards the final video of this series, Pokemon Yellow using only Mewtwo. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video. Just one more thing, which one of these Pokemon is better at the secret Professor Oak battle? Well, here's what happened when I faced him. I'm going up against the Blastoise team because both of these Pokemon don't really have good answers for Blastoise, but they do have good coverage against Venusaur and Charizard with Blizzard. For Dewgong, the answer is basically what it has been for the last little while. We're going to be using Horn Drill. I can use Blizzard to take out the Tauros and the Exeggutor, and then Body Slam to slowly take down the Arcanine. It's just going to be using Ember because Oak has good AI. After that, I tried to play around Blastoise using Rest with Body Slam and then use Blizzard for the Gyarados, but it wasn't working out very well, so in the end I just defaulted to the fact that Dewgong is faster than both of these Pokemon. You can use Horn Drill and one-shot both of them. I had a total of 4 resets trying to make this happen, and then in this final attempt, Horn Drill just no-scoped twice in a row and both of the water types fainted. Cloyster, on the other hand, is a lot more complex, but I don't know if it's worse against Oak. Both of these Pokemon seem pretty inconsistent against him, mostly because they're at a really low level after defeating the champion. And I don't like to do any extra training or any moveset changes when going into this battle. The Pokemon start Oak with the level and set that they had for the champion. The tricky thing for Cloyster is that it's leveling up after Oak's Exeggutor, which is by far the worst possible spot for this to take place, because then I can't badge boost infinitely on the Tauros while it spams Leer and Tail Whip. That would allow me to max out all my stats, at least in theory. I realized pretty quickly what I need to do. I have to set up withdraws on the Arcanine so that my moves will do more damage to Blastoise and Gyarados, since I'm not able to rely on Horn Drill. To make this happen is quite tricky. I need to mimic a move from Exeggutor, of course Hypnosis. Then I can put Arcanine to sleep, set up while it's not attacking me with Ember, and have enough health to survive the hits from Blastoise and Gyarados. Now, after one reset, I got pretty far into the fight, but then the Gyarados uses Hyper Beam and gets a critical hit, knocking Cloyster out despite my defense boosts. I went back in and I had reset after reset after reset because Hypnosis is fundamentally inconsistent, as we all know. I really wanted to make it by the Arcanine with green health because then I could just attack the Blastoise and the Gyarados, but once again, I'm on low health by the time those two come in and I don't want to chance crits. So once again, I'm relying on Hypnosis. Blastoise lowers its head with Skull Bash, I put it to sleep with Hypnosis and then knock it out. Gyarados is last. Like Blastoise, it goes to sleep, and with that, Cloyster defeats Oak. It had a total of 9 resets. So if we compare these two based on this metric alone, then Dewgong was faster at beating Oak. But I think both of these Pokemon are just not very good at taking him on overall. Thanks for watching. I hope you had fun. I'll see you next time.